Hi, I'm Andrew, and I've got Mitchell here to answer the question, why do people love prison movies?
I think they like prison movies because it represents a restriction of freedom. But then there's always like a way to get out, and it's what people have to deal with. They have to deal with other inmates, and that to me that's it about showing someone who has had their freedom taken away and how they handle it and how they get around it. Because you really appreciate your own freedom when you can see someone else's who's had theirs taken away.
Sure. Well, Mitchell gave me his top 10 prison movies list, and I think we'll just go through them as a way to explore this question a bit more. It's a very varied list, which shows the versatility of the genre. So number 10 is American History X. Can you tell us what this story is about?
American History X is like a story about like a neo-Nazi, and it's about like his experiences and things like that. And it is a really, really powerful film. Ed Norton is just amazing in it. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes drama as well with the director. People claiming credit, not credit, huge director star fights. And I just think it is a great drama. The thing that changed for me with Ed Norton is just how strong he got and physical he got.
Uh-huh.
And I think he went from the kind of, weebish type of guy, but this show just showed another depth to him, just how, his physical transformation is amazing in this film.
Yeah. Well, I noticed from this movie that it's a bit different from a prison movie because a lot of it takes place after he's released.
Yeah.
And strangely, he was a changed man from prison.
Yeah.
When it looked like he might actually go further down the path he was on.
Definitely.
And when he comes out, he wants to help his brother to avoid the path.
Oh, yeah. He said, don't go this path. Stay away from this. This is the path that I went on. It's a brutal one.
And the way he loses his neo-Nazi ways is very straightforward. He befriends a black man on laundry duty, of all things. So we're going to go through spoilers here. His younger brother, played by Edward Furlong, is murdered at the end in revenge. I think it sort of shows how difficult it is to really heal the race relations in America.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because the movie was a lot about trying to break that cycle of hate.
Yeah.
And that dark ending showed that it's not going to be easy.
No, it is not going to be easy. And when the hate's there, it is. When it is already there, when it's already embedded, how do you get that out? I don't know if the human race has solved that issue yet.
Yeah. So this entry is quite grim in the end, but it's a very powerful drama, as Mitchell said, so check it out. Okay, number 9 on the list, we have Lock Up from 1989. I'm pretty sure a big reason this is on the list is because Mitchell loves Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, he had a monster career. And to me, for him to try Lock Up, which is like a tough, gritty, again, the underdog type story, the 80s for Sylvester Stallone.
Okay. Well, I don't have a lot to say about this one. It does show the sort of standard tropes of prison movies that you were talking about with the sadistic warden.
I'll tell you what, when we talk about sadistic wardens, Donald Sutherland is fantastic as a sadistic warden. Yeah. It's excellent casting. Instead of going for someone, like macho or bigger muscles or anything like that against Sylvester Stallone, put someone who's cunning and ruthless and evil, and it's a good payoff of each other.
Yeah, they do. And another trope is that Stallone he's not quite completely innocent, but the warden has used his power to put him into a more maximum security prison than he would have been in.
Yeah.
Because he damaged his career, so that's his revenge. Now, did you ever hear that this movie was filmed in an actual prison called Rahway State Prison in New Jersey, and that the real-life inspiration for Rocky Balboa, Chuck Webner, was incarcerated there at the same time this was being filmed?
Is Chuck Webner in the movie? I am pretty sure he is, because those guys had, even though Chuck really appreciates what Stallone did, there was a lawsuit where I think Chuck was a bit down and out, and he needed some money. And I think the only idea he had thought he could have was to sue Paramount, Stallone, etc., just for a bit of cash, and he did get a payout.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure he was in prison, as you said, at this time, and actually got to see each other when he was filming Lockout.
Yeah, so that's an amazing bit of trivia.
Yeah, that is great trivia.
So anyway, in sum, a prison movie by way of 80s action movie. At number 8, we've got Victory from 1981, another Stallone movie. I'm glad you put this on your list because I love football almost as much as you love Stallone.
Well, the thing I like about Victory, in terms of this list as well, is we have 81, we have Victory, and 89 we have, so it's like 2 Stallone pictures, one at the start of the decade, one at the end of the decade.
Okay. You can definitely feel the difference. So this is a pretty outlandish combination of war movie, prison movie, and sports movie, but it totally works. The basic story is that in World War II, there's a German prisoner of war camp, and the Nazis challenged Michael Caine's motley crew of sort of semi-pros to a game of football to be held in Paris. The Nazis are assured they'll win, which will make it a huge propaganda coup for them. The POWs, meanwhile, plan to escape through a tunnel in the change room at half time. So it's the ultimate boys' own adventure for the World War II generation. Okay, so the football match is in the last 30 minutes of the movie. What did you find to enjoy in the other 90 minutes?
I just like the different characters, and I like the celebrity cameos from football superstars who even after watching this at a young age, I still knew who they were. And
well, I agree. The banter between Stallone and Michael Caine is a good time. Berate Stallone for his poor goalkeeping ability and all-around Americanness.
Yeah, but also too, I like how he brings almost like a Rocky persona to the goalkeeping.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty funny. So the football match is a proverbial game of two halves as the prisoners recover from 4-0 down to draw and then are carried to freedom by the pitch-invading crowd. I'd say it's the feel-good version of The Great Escape with equal inspiration from England's World Cup victory over Germany in 1966.
Yeah, it's a really good mix.
And the fun of it all is sort of encapsulated in the scene at halftime in the changing room when the prisoners have the opportunity to escape down the tunnel, but they decide it's more important to go out there and complete the football match.
Of course it's more important.
At number 7, we have Escape from New York, 1981. Arriving in the same year as Victory, but pretty much completely different in every other way.
Yeah,
I'll let Mitchell take this on.
Escape from New York is a movie that's held up incredibly well over the years. It was good then and it's great now. It was definitely one of the movies, to really take advantage of the VHS boom, with its poster and its stars and its high concept.
Okay, and not just on that, how is it a prison movie?
Well, the fact is that New York is a prison. And, I don't want to, I suppose, give it too much away, but, he's got to go in and he's got to get out.
Well, he's got to rescue the president. It's one of those great B-movie concepts.
Oh, yeah, it's a great B-movie concept, but just executed so well.
Yeah, it's a deserved cult classic now. And, of course, it has Snake Plissken. Can you describe Snake to us?
Yeah, I would describe him as Harrison Ford as Han Solo with an eye patch, but done in a Kurt Russell way. And it goes to show, to me, this role is exactly why, Kurt Russell did come very close to getting the Han Solo role.
All right. This movie was sort of openly disdainful of the position of president, wasn't it?
Definitely. And you got to remember, so this is kicking in 81. So, John Carpenter has very left-wing type of politics. So when you think about the writing process, production process, this would have probably been written smack bang when Richard Nixon, is on the outer in the mid-70s.
I think that's what inspired him. And, okay, so the villain, Duke, is played by Isaac Hayes. And he has what might be the original pimped-up rider station wagon with chandeliers on its roof. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And one thing too, it's got another great movie villain with Lee Van Cleef, of course, famous from the Clint Eastwood spaghetti western films. But not only is it, atmospheric and looks great and is just so focused, but also John Carpenter brings his A game when it comes to the score as well.
Oh, that score is quite remarkable.
Love it. I love it.
It sounds so contemporary even now.
Definitely. And please, look up a YouTube video of someone playing it and you'll realise how complex this is.
Wow, I have to do that. I also like the lighting. It mostly takes place at night, but very strong lighting with spotlights and flames.
Definitely. Yeah, a lot of that garbage bin on fire look.
Okay. So this is more of a man on a mission action movie than a prison movie, but I'm glad it's on this list. It's a good watch. Okay, number 6, there's Papillon.
Yeah, Papillon, which is French for butterfly, a movie based off a book. And by the way, very good book. I always like the overtones of the film. A lot of people believe that Papillon is in fact an amalgamation of not only the writer's experience, but other people's experiences in the prison as well, which comes out. And a very, very definitely one of the first prison films I ever saw when they showed it on TV.
Okay, now just on that, because I saw the version from 2017 starring Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah.
You meant for that's a remake, I didn't realise.
That is a remake, yeah. I saw the version with, again, what a pairing when you think about it, Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman.
Okay, I didn't know Dustin Hoffman was in it.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman's in the 70s version.
Okay. Now, there seem to be 2 things everyone knows about Australia. Our lethal animals and that we were colonised by convicts. But we're far from the only penal colony in history.
Yeah, definitely.
In this movie, French safecracker Henri Charrier, Papillon, is set up for a murder he didn't commit and shipped off to French Guiana, just north of Brazil.
Yeah.
And the shocking thing is how recently this happened in 1933.
Yeah, that's 1933. They're still using prisons and colonial outposts as prisons. And this outpost, like all prison outposts, was a brutal place.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen the original, but the 2017 version it's almost medieval.
Right, definitely.
Yeah. Did you see it? Was there a beheading and sort of disembowelment?
Well, I tell you what, one scene, and I'm quoting, it is kind of displayed in the movie and in a bit in the book, but one thing that always stands out for me is every time they would take a body out, they'd ring this bell and dump it out to sea, and all these sharks would always show up at the ringing of the bell. And it was almost like Pavlov's dog, where you'd as soon as you ring the bell and there's no body, the sharks would start showing up.
Okay. Right, so they didn't feed them alive to the sharks, at least?
They weren't fed alive, no, but their bodies were dumped out to sea, and then the sharks fed off them.
Wow. Such inhumanity even in 33.
Yeah, this is 30s. This is 30s Europe.
Yeah.
A European power was doing this.
Seems hard to believe. Okay, well, just a bit more on the story. So Papillon actually goes through years of solitary confinement because he tries to escape quite a few times. Would have driven most men mad, wouldn't it?
No, definitely.
Yeah, so his escape is a real testament to the strength of his spirit, even if it isn't all completely true.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, definitely. It is an incredibly strong spirit, and this is a guy that definitely doesn't give up.
Yeah, and so all of his suffering was worth it in the end because he moves to Venezuela, gets married, and then writes this book, which has sold 13 million copies to date.
It was a huge seller of a book, and there is a sequel as well.
Number 5, Midnight Express from 1978. Well, every few years, an Australian gets busted for drug smuggling, usually in an exotic developing country, and is sentenced to death or a long sentence in a rat-infested prison. The case makes headlines for months, if not years. This true-ish story is essentially the same, but it happens to an American in Turkey in 1970.
This is a movie that, to me, sums up like the golden era of Oliver Stone's script writing. Midnight Express, Conan the Barbarian, and Scarface. A lot of people get confused that, Oliver Stone directed these movies. He didn't, but definitely, he's all over the script. Brad Davis is amazing in this movie. How this guy wasn't a major film star, I have no idea. Maybe there was something going on with his personal life. Maybe I don't know, maybe it was difficult. I don't have a clue, but I don't know how a guy this good in 1978, his career would just feature TV movies after this, basically. He got the odd film role, but it was never, nothing of note, really.
I did not know this actor before, but he struck me as like that generation's Brad Pitt, so it surprises me he never kicked on. Okay, so it's presented at the start that Billy Hayes is indeed guilty, but it's heavily suggested his excessive punishment is due to being caught in a political crossfire, and besides, he was only smuggling hashish.
The thing with this, when this movie came out, the Turks were livid.
Yeah, they're not.
How this, depicted prisons and things like that. Oh, yeah, they were upset.
Yeah, probably fairly, although it's obviously meant to function as a cautionary tale. So
Yeah,
it's not as if
it's definitely meant to, as your excellent introduction said, definitely a cautionary tale, but, I highly doubt that anyone who has been busted for international smuggling took any note.
they might have done well to. So the prison scenes in this, they actually get surreal at some times,
That's
don't
right.
they? They are exaggerated, but the effect, even on the viewer, is just to watch Billy and his mental spiral downward
Oh, yeah.
each time he has his freedom presented to him, but then snatched away due to
Yeah.
some kind of bureaucracy or
Yeah.
political bun fight. Yeah. And so what about the scenes that bookend this movie, how tense they are?
Oh,
When he's
massive tension.
when he's at the start, when he's getting caught and, he's just sweating and,
And that's the start of the film. Also, too, the ending it's just so much tension. With the end of the last 15 minutes of the film, and it's just so well bookended.
I tell you, when Billy is walking down the street in that sort of soldier's uniform and that Jeep comes the other way, you're thinking, if he gets caught now, I'm just going to die myself. Yeah, so anyway, there were 2,500 other Americans in prisons around the world for similar offences at the time.
No one watched it. I'd say a lot of these people did watch it. They just didn't learn the lesson. When people are desperate, they do desperate things, and I think that's also one of the reasons probably Billy got busted in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think I read that it was like his third time doing it. And
That's right.
he certainly paid the price.
He definitely paid the price.
Let that be a lesson to us all. Number 4 is Cube from 1997. Now, this could also be characterised as a sci-fi or even a horror movie. Maybe it defies categorisation, but it highlights one aspect of many prison movies, which is a disparate group of people who need to band together to escape.
Definitely. I remember a friend of mine telling me about Cube in the 90s, and it was, he said, have you seen Cube? I said, no. I said, I haven't even heard of it. And I always like to follow what films are out. And that's honestly the first time I'd ever heard of it is a friend saying, have you seen Cube? He says, mate, see it. So I went down the video store, they actually had a copy, and I rented it. And I was just it was one of the best blindsides I've ever had in my life. That like an indie kind of low budget movie and just set, in one spot could be that good, and it is that good.
Yeah, it's very good sort of use of resources for an indie movie because it's pretty much just one room, isn't it?
It's just one room, one room, one spot with with the actors.
Yeah. So, what did the Cube represent to you?
I'd say the Cube just represented just being in that kind of small space, just a restriction where the restriction shouldn't restrict you, your freedom, and your creativity.
Yeah. I mean, all the prisons on this list are unfair, but this one is also mysterious and completely inexplicable, isn't it?
Definitely.
These characters just sort of wake up there. They'd been drugged or something like that, and they just
didn't have a clue how they got there.
Yeah, they had no clue. So the Cube looks kind of technological. The whole design of it is a giant technological puzzle. So I think it must represent just some vast authority, a callous system, just imprisoning people, which is maybe this is the most metaphorical movie on the list as well.
Definitely.
Well, I think another way to interpret it is, as in a capitalist society, it's as if even as these people all try to escape, they end up at each other's throats.
Definitely.
So
very Lord of the Flies in that regard. Interesting. I always find it interesting too that this is a Canadian-made film.
Right. Feels more American, okay.
Feels very American, but it's also too...
Well, ironically, nihilism is its point, perhaps. And it did spawn a few sequels. Have you seen any of them?
I've never seen a sequel.
Neither have I.
I'm aware they exist. I've never seen one.
Well, I think I heard that even they don't explain the Cube either. It's probably best that way.
Definitely best that way.
Number 3, The Shawshank Redemption, 1994. This movie features the greatest bromance in cinema history, and it was made probably before the word ever existed. To me, this is the ultimate prison movie, and clearly I'm not alone, as for many years it's been IMDb's #1 user-rated movie or thereabouts. So, a little controversial, this is #3 on Mitchell's list.
Oh, the thing with me with the Shawshank Redemption, look, it's good, but I personally just think it's terribly overrated. You know, for it to be 9, as you said on IMDb, it was #1 for ages. It's not there anymore. Silk's sitting at about 9.3 out of 10. And, you know, while you definitely look, it's a good movie, but yeah, look, I just think it's over the years, it's just become terribly overrated. Like, I think they did a review of, you know, people's favourite movie, and this was just clicking all the time, you know, when every time anyone was doing a list. Came out in a good year too for film, which was 1994. And yeah, definitely, you know, if we talk about a movie that's had some legs, The Shawshank Redemption sure has had some legs.
Okay, well, I'm going to differ a bit from Mitchell's opinion. I don't think it's too overrated at all. But okay, let's. I just think it's got all the standards of the prison movie sort of taken to the highest level. That's for me. We've got Andy, who's an innocent guy, gets thrown into a very brutal prison, and it's not even thought he's going to last by the other inmates. So he goes through all the hardships with other inmates and sadistic wardens, but he actually forms a special relationship with the warden by becoming his money man. So that's how he ingratiates himself with the warden, but it also becomes his trap because the warden can't let him go because he knows too much about his corruption. And, of course, has a very ingenious escape plan, albeit it takes a few decades, as cleverly suggested by the changing pinups.
Yeah, it's a very well-directed film, and also remember, too, it's based off the Stephen King short story, The Shawshank Redemption, and they cut out the Rita Hayworth part of the title. Now,
when we talk about what audiences want to see from a prison movie, Andy gets his comeuppance on the warden in spectacular fashion, while simultaneously enacting his escape. And did you know that escape is sort of symbolic of being reborn, because Andy exits through a woman's belly, in this case, Raquel Welch's poster.
Very clever.
And then through the tunnel he dug and out into the sewer pipe, sort of his final hardship before he is thrust back out into the world as a new man.
Yeah, very
And
clever.
into the rain so famously. But I don't even think that's the best part of the plot, because the real ending is about how Andy is reunited with Red. So Red is finally given parole, but the question is, can he survive on the outside after being institutionalised for so long? And so then this is when the romance really comes full circle, when Red finds Andy out on the Pacific. That didn't make you...
That's a great touch.
Yeah. It's probably this emotional ending that makes it so many people's favourite. #2, The Green Mile from 1999. This is the second Stephen King adaptation by Frank Darabont in a row, not death row. This is the only movie I know of with a protagonist who has a urinary tract infection, which brought back painful memories for me. Between that, the 3-hour length of the movie, and all the pee suggestion, I don't know how anyone can make it through this movie without going to the bathroom. Mitchell, what do you got to say about this?
Well, I saw it on DVD, so that wasn't an issue for me. I think The Green Mile, yeah, and again, it's one of those things where Stephen King does play up a lot of like cliches in his writing, and he does do them well. But you know, he always plays up the Indian burial ground. And the one that this one's famous for, of course, was where you had the African American with the magical powers or the magical insight. He did it in The Stand. He does it in this, and that's like a trope that quite often, you know, gets used a lot by Hollywood.
Okay. I didn't even realise that, but you're right. It's as much a fantasy movie as a prison movie.
Very much so.
And it's another King story that has a superpowered character in a grounded setting.
Mm.
So what's a bit different about this as well is that there's a kind-hearted warden for a change.
Well,
Paul Edgecombe, played by Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Although does have the usual
cast.
sadistic warden too. Okay, so who's the hero? John Coffey, played by Michael Clark Duncan, a gentle giant. Rest in peace, yeah. So unfortunately, it was from using his power, his magic ability to heal people, that got him in trouble, because he tried to bring back 2 dead girls. But as he held them in his giant, enormous hands, a mob assumes that he's the killer. It's revealed that John is innocent eventually, but due to unbeatable bureaucracy, even Paul can't do anything to save John from the electric chair. What did this movie mean to you?
I think it's just like a good switch on, a lot of and what it really meant for me is, just shows like the years and years of injustice that so many people had to put up with, in terms of getting railroaded, for whatever reason. And I think that's something that really highlights, I just hate to think of how many people were wrongly put in prison. People wrongly put in prison now. It's only because of initiatives like the DNA project that gets a lot of these people off. But you know what? They're so snowed under, they just struggle to keep up.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that John Coffey was both a racial minority and mentally challenged, and those are certainly two cohorts that are overrepresented in these unjust arrests, imprisonments.
Definitely. And that, almost a perfect recipe for a railroad job.
Yeah.
When you want a crime solved.
So it's interesting that these two Stephen King entries, Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, are pleas for prison reform, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And also it's a change up from Stephen King, especially, from his 70s and 80s work, where I suppose we could say, it was still Stephen King, but had a maturity to it, more an adult style to it, and that's something, that Frank Darabont really picked up on.
And what makes it number 2 on your list?
I just think it's just. I think the addition of Tom Hanks. I think the justice about this as well just works so well. I think the setting, and and Frank is coming hot off the Shawshank Redemption, and he continued his form onto The Green Mile. I think there's just some extra touches here that make it that bit extra special.
Okay. And this brings us to number 1 on the list. The Great Escape, 1963. Well, it's probably fitting this is number 1, as this is the granddaddy of them all, isn't it?
Yeah, this is an exceptional movie, and to me, arguably the greatest cast ever put together on film. It launched just some of the greatest action stars of all time and will be for all time's history. Let's go through them. First of all, it's got Steve McQueen, arguably the greatest action star of all time. You got in the support cast Charles Bronson, James Coburn, and an amazing cast, and just all of them are just bringing their A game on this. You can just tell it. Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, well, it features the most amazing and elaborate escape plan of them all, and more so because it's all true.
This is all true, and also, with the actual true case of the Great Escape, unfortunately, a lot of them met, by getting machine gunned down in a paddock somewhere in Europe. The motorcycle chase scene, even in the era of CGI and effects and amazing stunt coordination, it just has a rawness and an intensity that, just has to be seen by every film fan.
Well, that one was embellished, wasn't it?
They're greatly embellished, yeah. There was nothing like that. Everyone, just went out through the tunnel and got away, and unfortunately most of them were caught and rounded up and shot. Yeah.
If I have a criticism of this movie, it's that the inmates mostly seem to have a jolly good time while they're behind the razor wire.
Yeah, that's definitely well said. You got to remember, this is I'd have to check what date it came out, but, in the era of Hogan's Heroes and The Great Escape, that's, you never, in those era and in those movies, you never saw the brutality of a German World War II prison camp. To be fair, they were Allied soldiers, were treated a lot better than, other nationalities and people from different countries, yet, it still is a German World War II prison camp.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I remember asking my dad, why didn't they just wait until the war was over? It seemed like they could have just waited it out. Yeah.
But also, it's some of the great scenes, of course, everyone knows, I was always heard of the famous motorcycle chase at the end, but we talk about moments of true tension when they dig that tunnel and see that they're short of the woods and they're sticking their heads up, you go, oh no. Yeah, it's a great oh no moment in cinema history too.
Yeah, so I think for prison movies, well, this shows how men, without their freedom, just the resourcefulness that they'll call upon.
Resourcefulness is just amazing.
Yeah.
As the problems, whatever problem comes up, they solve it. Think of that, being able to make a passport in a prison. You know, what do you do with all the dirt? You know, just remember, you've got to dig a tunnel without them hearing that.
Yeah, I think they had to dig especially deep to do that.
Yeah,
so,
it's a master stroke of engineering and escape plan.
Yeah. So why do you think English people like this movie so much when it ends with so much tragedy?
I think it just shows the spirit of the man. Yeah. I think that's what I like, and I think in the movie too, it shows a few of the guys getting away, and it wasn't quite like that. I think if they just show the brutality ending, but it just goes to show these guys were prisoners of war, but they were still fighting the war, and they were still causing trouble for the Germans, and the amount of resources they would have had to have done to track these guys down in the middle of winter when it was really game on, was a victory for the men who were in that camp.
Well, it's sort of like an Anzac tale in that way. The characteristics of defiance, resoluteness, and stoicism.
Mm. And James Coburn plays an Australian in that too, speaking of Anzacs.
Right. Now that we've finished that great list, let's return to the question, why are these stories popular? So in addition to what Mitchell said, I think most of us can relate to being in a situation we want to escape from. These prisons are full of bullies and jerks, much like schools or workplaces. They symbolise both our bosses in the form of sadistic wardens and our co-workers in the form of other inmates.
When I was a kid at school and when I was in high school, I used to watch Prisoner. And nothing to me I could relate to in my life connected to high school as much as watching Prisoner. I don't think you appreciate your freedom. But when you see, when you're going about your daily businesses and you see that there are men in periods of history who had their freedom taken away, and these places were tough and brutal, and this is how they handle it. So whatever you're going through in your life, how are you going to handle it?
That's an excellent point. They are inspirational in that way. I mean, perversely, we want to see our heroes suffer more, don't we?
That's right.
Because the more they suffer, the better the catharsis.
And the harder they're going to bounce back.
Yeah. The catharsis when they escape, and that we want to see them go on to live full lives because they deserve it. Now, when it comes to the escapes themselves, we want them to be ingenious and also a physical trial. And we want to see the authorities who were in charge of all the humiliation and abusive power get their comeuppance.
When you see Steve McQueen escape in The Great Escape on that motorcycle, and you see him absolutely gunning for the Alps, it's just, it is an amazing release. It's just like, go, get there, get to that finish line.
I guess his recapture sort of feels realistic as well, though, doesn't it? Because sometimes, pretty much every day we might dream of retirement, but then we're going back in, aren't we?
Yeah.
Just to see Steve McQueen be so stoic when he's thrown back into solitary confinement and see how he handles it, just bouncing his ball again.
I want to see him, make that jump too. I can't say, put in words how hard I wanted him to see him clear that barbed wire fence.
Well, that's it, though. We can dream that he did eventually. Another common aspect to prison stories is that the heroes are innocent and unjustly imprisoned. Or they might be partly responsible, but the punishment is excessive and punitive. Obviously, this makes them more sympathetic and easy to root for. But again, on the metaphorical level, we can all relate to how life isn't fair. We're all in situations we didn't create, but we're stuck in them all the same. Whether this is authoritarian repression, financial hardship, bad health, or social disadvantage, we all feel like the system exists to keep us down, or we're unwitting victims to the randomness of the universe. And our ultimate fantasy is to escape our circumstances, and that's what these stories give us. So thanks for watching our video. Now, these movies served as a big inspiration for our graphic novel called Above the Grave. But it's also completely different to all the movies on this list. Mitchell, you came up with this idea. Tell us a bit about it.
I wanted to do something, which represented it, like a rock and roll attitude and in a way like the, European experience in Africa. Whereas before, it was Tarzan, who was from an aristocratic background. And even though he was free in the jungle was still a prison in a way with the animals and the apes and things like that. So I thought, I wanted to do a story where, it was, set in Southern Africa and also to involve an underground prison, which I heard about on a news report one day. And I just thought that was an incredibly interesting, avenue or vehicle, for storytelling.
Well, what you didn't mention is that it's a supervillain prison guarded by a heroic warden who has no powers. So I thought that was a very interesting way to flip the script, to have the warden as a hero for a change.
Yeah, surely there's some heroic wardens out there.
Well, it's a very tough job, I imagine. Who inspired the hero Rick Masterton?
I would say he was definitely inspired by, like a lot of British 60s rock and roll stars with his look and his vibe and his energy. So I thought the idea of someone like that who doesn't, while he's an authoritarian figure, he doesn't kind of respect it, or doesn't respect just like the bad things that authority can bring up. That's
definitely another very interesting wrinkle, because usually the warden would be the authority. But actually this satirises the over-corporatisation of everything, and in this case of prisons. And it's interesting that there are some people who've read it who think of this more as like a workplace comedy that happens to be set in a supervillain prison. Just back onto Rick again, something that didn't occur to me while I was designing the character, but that people mention, is that he reminds them of Kurt Russell, which is quite funny because he was Snake Plissken, of course. So tonally, this is also very much an homage to 80s action movies.
Very much so.
So we can promise you some great action in it. And if we do say so ourselves, there's an ingenious jailbreak as well. But the unique aspect is that there are truly villainous inmates trying to escape, and Rick has to try to outsmart them. So another way to flip the script there. Any closing thoughts?
Well, if you're going through anything in your life where you feel you're restrained, you're restricted, well, guess what? There's always your escape, whether it's mental or physical. So always feel free to either check out some of the movies that we've listed here and see what you get out of them, and also too feel free to check out the graphic novel at abovethegrave.com.
And just one final thought from me, since Mitchell mentioned it, that's the journey that Rick goes on too. And stories are a great escape.
Even prison needs justice. Deep in the heart of the Kalahari Desert is a secret underground installation called Mako. Converted from a disused diamond mine, it's now a supervillain prison and home to the worst of the worst criminals the world has ever seen. No one gets out alive, but they're getting closer. Join new warden Rick Masterton as he explores Mako, uncovers its true and covert purpose, and attempts to prevent a jailbreak by superpowered inmates, including the shape-shifting Mr. Twister, genius crocodile-human hybrid Crocodilus, sentient and lethal banyan tree, divine, and luck-manipulating spy and assassin, Russian roulette. In the process, Rick will come face-to-face with an enemy from long ago, but in a place where no one finds redemption. Will he be able to bury the ghosts of the past?